Hi, I'm Mike Blume. This is lesson 23 of a series of discussions concerning end-time Bible prophecy. And in this lesson, I want to talk about Old Testament church prophecies, verified by the New Testament as being church prophecies that are often mistaken as being millennialist prophecies, or the idea that a future millennium after the church age will be when these prophecies are fulfilled. I want you to clearly see that the ideas that dispensationalists have regarding a millennium are derived from taking Old Testament prophecies and proposing fulfillments of them that the Lord and the apostles never spoke about nor agreed with. I take the Lord and the apostles' lack of any similar teachings to be indication that they are incorrect teachings. The Lord and the apostles taught all that we need to understand, and they are silent about millennialism. We can hardly be expected to believe that the Lord and the apostles believed in and agreed with the teachings of the dispensationalists if they never breathed a word about interpreting the concerned prophecies in the same way that dispensationalists do. But they expect us to believe that the Lord and the apostles agreed with them. Yet I must read an interpretation of those Old Testament prophecies made by the Lord and the apostles that indicates they agree with how dispensationalists teach a millennium. I find none in the New Testament. So I'm not going to believe the Lord and the apostles agreed with them. The people who concocted dispensationalism have actually done the following. They saw that these Old Testament prophecies about the wolf and the lamb, not the lion and the lamb, lying together and similar, and read them literally without perceiving the prophecies would deal with the greatest work of God of all, ending all ages in the earth, the church. And they must have noticed that the Lord and the apostles never said anything about such interpretations. So they could only have concluded that the Lord and the apostles simply were not concerned with them, though they were still true in their minds. It's as though they figured the Lord and the apostles were only concerned with the church age, while another age of the kingdom or millennium would follow the church age, but was not the point of the New Testament. So in actuality, they began preaching things that the Lord and the apostles never preached. They rejected the notion that the Lord and the apostles, in the New Testament writings, must have preached about something before it can be esteemed as a proper and true doctrine. Think about that. And then they took the book of Revelation and read it through the same faulty and misguided manner in which they read the prophecies of the Old Testament. They took them at face value, not seeing any metaphors or biblical imagery in the writings of John. As I noticed in another series that we were talking about, Jesus used the exact same terms when speaking about parables that we see in the first few verses of the book of Revelation. He said, "Blessed is he who hears." This indicates, like the phrase, "Let him who has ears to hear, hear," that face value interpretations are exactly not what Jesus wants us to gain from hearing these parables. He's giving us a hint. Catch what I'm saying. He wouldn't say that if we just took it at face value. Matthew 13 and 10. And the disciples came and said unto him, "Why speakest thou unto them in parables?" He answered and said unto them, "Because it is given unto you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it is not given. For whosoever hath, to him shall be given, and he shall have more abundance. But whosoever hath not, from him shall be taken away, even that he hath. Therefore I speak to them in parables, because they seeing see not, and hearing they hear not. Neither do they understand, and in them is fulfilled the prophecy of Esaias, which saith, By hearing ye shall hear, and shall not understand, and seeing ye shall see, and shall not perceive. For this people's heart is waxed gross, and their ears are dull of hearing, and their eyes they have closed, lest at any time they should see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and should understand with their heart, and should be converted, and I should heal them. But blessed are your eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. For verily I say unto you that many prophets and righteous men have desired to see these things which ye see, and have not seen them, and to hear those things which ye hear, and have not heard them. In Revelation 1 and 3, Blessed is he that readeth, and they that hear the words of this prophecy, and keep those things which are written therein, for the time is at hand. So Revelation is introduced at the very outset as a book that is representative of symbols, not actualities. Actualities were symbolized in Revelation. Dispensationalists have actually situated themselves in the position of the Pharisees. not in rejecting Jesus and denying the Lord's truths as the Pharisees did, but in the Pharisees' one aspect of being unable to properly understand the words of Christ and unable to perceive the spiritual meaning behind the parable-type visions of Revelation. So let us refer to the prophecies that dispensationalists refer to as an age after the church age, in which natural Israel will be highlighted in this earth. And note that the dispensationalist interpretation is extremely grave error. Blessed are they who hear the words of these prophecies of the Old Testament, verified as fulfilled in the New. Let's go to Joel 2, verse 28 to 32. And it shall come to pass afterward that I will pour out my Spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, your old men shall dream dreams, your young men shall see visions. And also upon the servants and upon the handmaids in those days will I pour out of my Spirit. And I will show wonders in the heavens and in the earth, blood and fire and pillars of smoke. The sun shall be turned into darkness and the moon into blood before that great and terrible day of the Lord come. And it shall come to pass that whosoever shall call on the name of the Lord shall be delivered. For in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem shall be deliverance, as the Lord hath said, and in the remnant whom the Lord shall call. In Acts chapter 2, verse 16, this prophecy was quoted. But this is that which was spoken by the prophet Joel. And it shall come to pass in the last days, saith God, I will pour out of my Spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, and your young men shall see visions, and your old men shall dream dreams. Peter said the prophecy about the last days is now. And he said that 2,000 years ago. What Joel said about the last days, this is what Joel prophesied. And on my servants and on my handmaids will I pour out in those days of my Spirit, and they shall prophesy. And I will show wonders in heaven above and signs in the earth beneath, blood and fire and vapor of smoke. The sun shall be turned into darkness and the moon into blood before that great and notable day of the Lord come. And it shall come to pass that whosoever shall call on the name of the Lord shall be saved. Peter referred to the speaking in tongues of the 120 on the day of Pentecost in the upper room, which had been the subject of a great controversy and interest amongst the gatherers who saw and heard this phenomenon. He responded to their various explanations of the events and finally referred to the Old Testament scripture to explain the actual meaning behind it all. What were they seeing and what were they hearing? This is what Joel prophesied in Joel 2. When Joel referred to something to come to pass afterward, Peter said Joel was referring to the last days, in which Peter and the 120 were actually living. The last days, therefore, were not days in our future when the world ends. Peter said the last days were in his day. Now, something must be noted here. People have heard it preached for so long that the last days are in our society, in our future rather, when society comes to an end, that they immediately think of that thought whenever they hear the words, the last days. First of all, Joel never would have used those words. He just said, it shall come to pass afterwards. This does not mean Peter was incorrect about what Joel said, as though he misquoted Joel, but he gave the true understanding of what Joel was saying. The last days in Peter's words were not the popular concept of the end of the world that people have today. When Peter said the last days, he simply meant exactly what Joel said, afterwards or later on in Joel's future. This shows us that the last days in the apostles' minds never meant anything similar to what people today think they mean. Some might say Peter quoted the Septuagint, which repeats Peter's words in Joel. However, this doesn't make the King James Version translation of afterwards to be incorrect. It simply verifies that the last days actually means the same thing as afterwards in this instance. In our next video, I'm going to discuss the idea of a double fulfillment of prophecy, in which some futurists say, yes, a lot of this was fulfilled in the first century, but that's only a foreshadow of what will really happen in our future.